At different pHs, diseases grow, and at different pHs, it's very hard for disease to grow.
Meet Barbara O'Neill, a trailblazer in the realm of natural wellness with over a quarter-century of hands-on experience. As a respected naturopath and health educator, Barbara has dedicated her career to unraveling the mysteries of holistic health and sharing her insights with the world. In this eye-opening video, Barbara O'Neill tackles a fundamental aspect of our well-being, the body's pH balance. She'll explore how our dietary choices can tip the scales between acidity and alkalinity within our systems, and why this balance is crucial for fending off disease and promoting vibrant health. Prepare to discover which foods can be your allies in maintaining an ideal pH level. Barbara will guide you through the intricate dance of nutrients that can foster an alkaline environment in your body. A state many experts believe is key to unlocking optimal health and resilience against chronic conditions. But that's not all. Barbara dives deeper, illuminating the fascinating connections between pH balance and prevalent health concerns like inflammation and cancer. By the end of this video, you'll be equipped with practical, actionable advice to help you navigate your way to a balanced pH and potentially transform your health journey. Now, let's hear from Barbara.
What foods have an acid effect and what foods have an alkaline effect? And this will enable you to ensure that you're having a more alkaline diet.
So, what foods are alkaline and what are acidic?
So we're going to have a look at alkaline foods and we're going to look at acid foods. And you might be surprised to see that the first alkaline food I'm putting up here is the humble lemon, and you might say, no, the lemon's acid. It is. And it's acid where it should be. There's only one part in the body that should be acid. You know where that is? Stomach.
What's the next alkaline food?
Also vegetables. Vegetables have an alkaline effect.
Do all vegetables have an alkaline effect?
This is the nightshade group of vegetables, and for some people they have an acid effect, and for some people they have an alkaline effect.
What's the next alkaline foods?
Lima beans, and lentils, and soy are the three alkaline forming legumes.
What about grains?
For your grains, the millet is alkaline. Quinoa, these are alkaline grains, but they're also gluten-free grains, so that's made them very popular. Amaranth.
Now Barbara will tell us more about the history of wheat.
So let me give you the wheat story. The original wheat that God made is called Enkenhorn, or some call it just Enkhorn. And that original wheat had a very fragile protein or gluten structure. It is not sure when, but they estimate a couple of thousand years ago, Enkenhorn did a wild hybrid with a field grass and came up with the Emma strain of wheat. Its structure, its protein or gluten structure is not as fragile, but it's still fairly fragile. And in the 1950s, it was the Emma strain of wheat that was put through intensive crossbreeding, and it came up with the hybridized wheat that we know today. That hybridization of the wheat created an incredibly complex gluten or protein structure.
Barbara will now explain why we are where we are with
the hybridization process changed the gluten or the protein structure, and it's almost only a cast iron gut that can break down that very complex protein or gluten structure. That explains why so many people are gluten intolerant today. You look at the timeline. So it was the 1950s that the wheat was hybridized. It was the 1970s that it went worldwide. So by the 1990s, every pasta, every pizza, every biscuit, cake, cookie, donut, cereal, bread, it's all made out of the hybridized wheat. You see, the farmers love it, and I don't blame them for loving it because they get 6 times more grain per acre Who wouldn't like that? They've got to pay their bills. But as I mentioned yesterday, it was zoomed through to help with the starvation crisis in the world, and safety studies were never done. This explains the gluten intolerance that we see today. The two most common symptoms of a gluten intolerance is brain fog and bloating. I meet so many people that have brain fog and bloating, and they almost think it's normal, or it can be blamed on age. Poor old age gets blamed for so many things. Isn't that true?
Barbara will now explain why sourdough bread is a little different than other wheat breads.
Now this Emma wheat, it also did a wild hybrid to come up with a field grass and came up with the spelt. So the spelt, it has retained the fairly fragile structure, and if that spelt meal is made into a sourdough bread, the culturing process in the sourdough bread breaks down that protein or gluten structure even more, so that it now has the original structure of the Enkenhorn. If someone is celiac, they cannot have even the spelt. But if someone's gluten intolerant or gluten sensitive, they can usually handle the spelt, especially if it's made into a sourdough bread.
Any other alkaline foods?
The two nuts are your almond and Brazil. And all your seeds have an alkaline effect.
And the final alkaline food
is fruit. Now I've got a question mark with fruit too. Why have I got a question mark? If someone has a yeast presence in their body and they're eating a lot of fruit, the sugar in the fruit will feed the yeast. And as the yeast feeds on the sugars in the fruit, it gives off acetic acid. It gives off lactic acid. It gives off uric acid. So it basically is feathering its nest. So when a person has a yeast presence and they're eating a lot of fruit, can you see that they are feeding the problem? And they're creating the environment of 5.5 where yeast loves to live. And alcohol is also given off. Alcohol breaks down in the body to acetaldehyde. And acetaldehyde is a neurotoxin. We don't want a neurotoxin. A neurotoxin is a brain killer. There are 5 places you can be exposed to acetaldehyde. Yes, if someone consumes alcohol. Yes, if someone has a yeast problem and they're having a lot of fruit, it will break down to this. Cigarette smoke, car fumes give off acetaldehyde, and the last one is vinegar.
Barbara will now talk about the other side of the pH ledger.
Let's have a look at acid-forming foods now. These acid-forming foods are high in the acid-forming minerals, which is phosphorus, sulfur, and chlorine. So what foods are high in phosphorus, sulfur, and chlorine? Meat. This explains why Dr. Colin Campbell found he could turn cancer cells on and off like a switch by the amount of meat and dairy products he was giving the rats.
Another acidic food?
Refined sugar. It's very acid forming.
Is there more acidic food?
The hybridized wheat. The hybridization of the wheat created a lot more of the acid-forming minerals.
Okay, any other acidic food?
Aged cheese. What's the blue in the blue vein cheese? The blue in the blue vein cheese is mold. So the only cheeses that don't sit under that category, the cheeses that have probably a pH of 7 would be your fresh. So that's your cottage, your ricotta. I'm not saying that they are okay, because usually they come from cows who have not been fed right or have chemicals in them. But on the pH scale, they're not as acid.
Maybe stick with organic fresh cheese. Another acidic food?
Caffeine. All your caffeine foods and drinks have an acid effect. And of course, caffeine usually comes hand in hand with the sugar, which certainly ups it. And remember our 2.6 Coca-Cola, that's a combination of the caffeine and the sugar.
Oh no, I love black coffee. Another acidic food?
Alcohol is not a food, but it creates an acid environment in the body. Tobacco is not a food, but it also creates an acid environment in the body. All your other grains, other than the grains that sit on the alkaline side, all your other legumes, other than the lima, lentil and soy, and all your other nuts, other than the almond and Brazil, have an acid effect.
So, what do we need to do?
To maintain the 6.5 environment, we need to be consuming 20% acid-forming foods and 70 to 80% alkaline-forming foods. And I'm sure you're not surprised to hear me say that the 20% should come from this section here. Yes, oatmeal is here. Yes, rice is here. They're not bad grains. We need a little acid. Yes, your chickpeas are here, and your garbanzos, your chickpeas, your black-eyed beans, your kidney beans. They're not bad. Of course they're not bad. We need a little acid. It's when the whole meal is acid that tips the scales.
That doesn't sound like a common diet.
How many Americans would be eating 90% acid, 10% alkaline? Is that true? No wonder cancer and heart disease are neck to neck for the #1 killers in the world today. Far more people die from alcohol-related diseases. Far more people die from tobacco-related diseases. And yet they're not banning tobacco or alcohol, are they?
Barbara will now give us some food diet tips.
Just as the gardener plays with the pH of the soil to get the right colour flower, you can play with the pH of your soil, cell, to create different health and sicknesses conditions in the body. One of the easiest ways to do it is eat more vegetables, eat more greens. Start pursuing the other grains. And little by little, without your family even realizing it, you can begin to create an alkaline environment in your family.
Remember, your health is the lock, and we're here to provide the keys. Keep turning to Key Health for insights that unlock your full potential. The key to lifelong vitality is in your hands. It's just one bite away.